welcome, everyone. Welcome back. If you are joining us again for night two, drop in the chat whether or not you are joining us again for night two, or whether or not you're joining us for the first time. This is the second night of our 3-night workshop series centering the mental health of Black men and boys. So again, drop in the chat if you're joining us for the second night in a row. Shout out to you. We see you. We appreciate you. Let's bring that same energy that we had last night. And if you're joining us for the first time, again, welcome and thank you for taking time out of your schedule to center mental health. Last night, we laid the foundation. We talked about the weight of history, how stereotypes, silence, and generational messages have shaped the way Black men are taught to feel or not feel. We reflected on how emotional expression is often discouraged, how that impacts the way we move through the world and the way we connect, and the way that we ask for help or don't. So tonight we're going to build on that conversation by focusing on something that affects many of us, but often isn't named: isolation. Tonight we want to break the silence. We want to acknowledge that many of us Black men feel isolated, whether we are physically alone in a room or in a room full of people, and highlight the power of support. We are going to explore how isolation shows up in our lives, how it affects our mental health, and most importantly, how we begin to build support systems that are real, safe, and sustaining. We're going to talk about how we can be in connection, how we can make connection. And you won't be hearing from me all this evening. So already throwing that out there, don't worry, you won't be hearing from me only this evening. We have an incredible panel of Black mental health professionals who will offer their wisdom, their stories, and their strategies around building connection and resilience. So I want to jump in. I invite you to not just reflect on how you feel when you're alone, but how you feel when you're truly seen and supported, because that's what we're going to be working towards tonight. This session is more than just about naming isolation. We want to understand what's driving it, especially for Black men and Black boys, whether it's cultural expectations, unspoken grief, the pressure to keep pushing through. We'll talk about real things that focus, that keeps us emotionally disconnected, even when we are surrounded by people. And then we'll talk about what support actually looks like, therapy as a form of formal care. We'll talk about informal care, because support doesn't always wear a professional title. Sometimes it looks like a check-in and a text, a conversation at the barbershop, a moment when someone gives you time and space to be vulnerable, to be real. And then we're going to explore what it looks like to encourage help-seeking behavior, because we know that care for everything and everyone is a burden that many of us tonight have to carry. So our mental health, your mental health, deserves the same level of care and attention. And I want to shout you out for already doing that work by being here tonight. So let's hit the chat. Keep the chat engaged all night long, whether you're responding to a question, whether you want to drop a reflection, whether something really resonated with you, keep the chat live. But in one word, how would you describe what support feels like for you? In the chat, one word, how would you describe what support feels like for you? What is that one word? I know it's hard to pick a word, but how would you describe what support feels like for you? All right, appreciate you. There they go. I see acceptance, being seen, connection, understanding, confidence. Oh, I think that's powerful. Warmth. A lot of commonality within the chat. I think understanding safety is a big one. Space. Love that. Empathy. Connection. Thank you for sharing those words. Again, let's keep that engagement in the chat. Keep reflecting, stay engaged throughout the night. Let's break down isolation, because it's not just one thing. Emotional isolation is when someone feels alone, even if they're physically around people. We may be at work, in school, even in a group chat, but still feel like no one really sees or hears us. For a lot of Black men and boys, emotional isolation can be tied to things like fear of vulnerability, unprocessed trauma, or simply not having the language or the space to express emotional safety. We talked about some of that last night. Then we have social isolation, which is more about a lack of meaningful relationships or missing a true sense of connection to a larger community. That might come from having small or distant support circles, not engaging in social activities, or struggling with anxiety when you're in social spaces or when you're around other people. And even if someone does have a few connections, if they don't feel safe enough to share their truth, then it still creates emotional distance. So it's really important to name that these two forms of isolation often overlap. Someone can have friends and still feel emotionally alone. Someone may not have a strong support system at all and feel both socially and emotionally disconnected. So since we've defined what isolation looks like, let's talk about why it shows up so often in the lives of Black men and boys. Research and real life show that cultural pressures play a big role. Many Black men are raised with powerful messages about strength and what it's supposed to look like. Messages like always appear strong, don't show weakness, keep your struggles to yourself, are repeated themes that we internalize as we are growing up and as we are defining what it means to be a man. There aren't just personal traits, they are often survival strategies. Generations of being criminalized, misunderstood, or ignored have led to a kind of emotional armor. But the problem is the armor gets extremely heavy, and the longer we carry it, the more isolated we become. We talked about in workshop 1 about emotional fluency. When you're taught to suppress or hide your emotions, it doesn't mean they disappear. It just means that they stay inside, often unspoken or unresolved. So tonight we're naming that as a failure, but not as a pattern. One that we've inherited, one that served a purpose, but also one that gets in the way of us having a true balance in terms of our emotional and mental health. I think out of all the things that we will discuss over the 3 nights of this series, this one hits the most for me. Hyper independence is something that I came to realize I truly was dealing with. And it's still something that I am working through and resolving as I, develop my own mental health journey and as I really prioritize my own mental health. So hyper independence is a coping mechanism where a person becomes excessively self-reliant. So often avoiding support or help from others, even when it's needed. It's often rooted in trauma, sometimes betrayal or neglect, environments where dependence on others led to disappointment or harm. It is an extreme form of self-reliance, but it is something that's very prevalent among Black men and Black boys. Independence is healthy. And we want to teach our young men. I'm a father. I want to teach my son independence. Hyper independence isolates. It can hinder relationships. It prevents growth. It leads to burnout. All of these things I started to recognize and relate to were happening in my own life. Healing usually involves learning to trust safe people, set boundaries. That's something I'm working on. And allow vulnerability and know that it's measured in different ways. Historical and intergenerational trauma in Black families passes down lessons like handling yourself, embedding this hyper independence, or never really asking others for help because that's a sign of weakness. So we suppress. Cultural messages reinforce trauma and pressure that Black men and boys to be self-sufficient above everything else, be independent. But hyper independence reduces mental health support seeking. It deepens isolation. And I think the biggest thing that really resonated with me as I was learning about this, that really made me make a change, were the long-term health impacts that this self-reliant mindset can cause. So while it's adaptive and short-term stress, it leads to burnout, untreated PTSD, depression, chronic issues like hypertension, and higher risk behaviors are all associated with hyper independence. For Black men, there are real and layered barriers that show up at the personal and cultural and systemic levels. First, the fear of stigma and judgment. Oftentimes, we've been taught explicitly or silently that showing emotions is weakness, that asking for help means that you're broken, that fear keeps so many people silent. And even when you're struggling the most, you are more reserved and fearful of what the judgment will be to name that you need help, to then to actually seek help. There's a lack of cultural competent providers. Even when someone does decide to seek help, it can be hard to find a therapist or professional who really understands your lived experience. There are still few to Black mental health professionals, and that's why I'm honored to have 3 tonight who are going to stand in the gap and engage us in conversation. And then we can't ignore like financial and accessibility barriers. Mental health care can be expensive. It may not be covered by insurance. It may not be close to home. So even when someone is ready for the support, they may not be able to access it. And while community-based support matters, peer connection, culturally grounded programs, and nights like tonight are essential. They help fill the gaps and they create bridges where the system oftentimes falls short. If we're talking about barriers to well-being, then the conversation has to include the public health issue of racism. It's more than just about moments of bias or disrespect. It's about a system that creates chronic stress that denies access to care. And that makes Black men and young boys feel unsafe in spaces that they are supposed to offer help and healing. One of the main ones being the education system. There are decades of research that shows that experiencing racism and racism discrimination is linked to higher rates of depression, anxiety, and PTSD. And it's not just around direct experience. Sometimes it's that constant awareness that you could be treated unfairly, misread, or criminalized for simply just existing. Black men and Black boys, this is especially heavy, and it's something that we carry on a daily. Very often we have the talk with our young Black men as they get into a certain age, preparing them for situations that we hope never happen, but we know could. Being stopped, surveilled, punished more harshly in schools, portrayed as a threat in the media. All of these experiences add up and they create the emotional wounds that are rarely acknowledged and rarely treated. So we can't just talk about isolation or support without talking about justice. Mental health is personal, but mental health isn't just personal. It's political, it's historical, it's connected to systems that we move through every day as a Black man or as a young Black child. So let's jump into masculinity just a little bit. Early messages around manhood shape how we grow up and influence the struggles that we experience. Many of us have heard messages like, don't cry, you better not cry. Man up, you better use them hands. Don't be soft. These are more than just phrases, they're formidable lessons. Ones that teach boys to disconnect from themselves emotionally in order to be accepted, respected, or even just to feel safe. But here's what that really means when we internalize those beliefs. So those emotions don't disappear, they get stored in our body, sometimes leading to serious health issues like high blood pressure, something that's chronic within the Black community. When emotional expression is limited to anger or aggression, it shows up later in life as conflict in relationships, difficulty managing stress, perpetuated violence. And I think one of the most eye-opening is that these patterns can make it hard for men to be fully present emotionally, available as fathers, partners, or friends as they reach adulthood. Not because they don't care, not because we don't care, but because we weren't really taught how to show these things in a healthy way. So highlighting that is not about shaming anyone, including myself, for how we were raised. We're just here to name it. And then we got to start to ask ourselves, what would it look like if we redefine strength, starting with emotional honesty? And then as a result of that, we redefine masculinity. Too often, masculinity gets tied to silence, control, or toughness, but real strength looks like vulnerability. We talked last night around equipping ourselves to be able to model vulnerability for younger generations, being honest about what we're feeling and then what you need. We got to create safe spaces. Again, a theme coming back from last night, where Black men and Black boys are encouraged to express emotion. And the key piece is without judgment. And I'm going to be very honest and transparent in this moment. As a young father, this is something that I'm still working on and reflecting on all the time. Just allowing my son to express his emotions without any judgment from me, whether I think it fits the moment or not. So shout out to all those parents out there who are trying. You got this. So it's not about being hard or being competitive, but being caring, emotionally present, and connected. As a father, those are all the things that I want to be able to not just master, but then model for my son. And that's the kind of masculinity that can lead to healing, that can allow us to grow up really understanding what it truly means to be a man without those typical societal pressures and just false norms. All right, so let's pause real quick. Let's take a moment to reflect. How have messages about what it means to be a man in the Black community shaped the way you or people you know express emotions or handle conflict or even seek support? So whether or not you're taking time to personally reflect, or whether or not you are bold enough to drop that reflection in the chat, we're going to take about the next 30 seconds. We'd love to get some responses in the chat, but more importantly, we want you to do some self-reflection. How have these messages about what it means to be a man in the Black community shaped the way you or people you know express emotions, handle conflict, seek support, or lack thereof? And again, if you're comfortable, I invite you to share your thoughts in the chat. Taking a little time for personal reflection. I know for me, one of the things that I reflect on is that I know being strong is more than just physical. It is so mental. I think for me, the physical is easy. I love being active. It's being as committed to my mental. That truly has been a message that I'm reshaping in terms of what it means to be a man. I see some participating in the chat. Thank you to those who are willing and able to share. We appreciate you modeling vulnerability this evening. All right, let's talk about support systems. So oftentimes for Black men, we got to talk about the formal and the informal. We may lean more heavily in one area than the other. But I think tonight we want to talk about what does that balance look like for both formal and informal support. Formal support systems available for Black men, and really oftentimes it can feel complicated accessing them. But we have therapy and we have counseling services. We know that therapy can be a powerful tool, but it's not always easy to set up. And I'm excited to jump a little bit more into that with our panel. Many Black men hesitate to seek professional help because of stigma or mistrust or past experiences. We have the 988 crisis line for mental and emotional or even substance related support. Whether you are in crisis or whether it's just a bad day, it is an access that it is a service that can be accessed at any moment in time. You could call, you could text as well. And then there are support groups. There are groups like NAMI, Black Men Heal, Therapy for Black Men. Shout out to anybody who's on the call who may be representing those organizations. These groups offer free or low-cost mental health services that are designed specifically with Black men in mind, making it easier in these spaces that don't understand the culture often, kind of reducing the pressure and trying to eliminate the silence. I want to call out that while formal support exists, part of the work is making sure it feels accessible, that it feels relevant, that it's trustworthy. So we're going to explore how to pair informal systems of care too, because it isn't one size fit all. So we're talking about informal supports. We often focus on therapy or clinical care. And again, it's essential and it's important, but many Black men first instinct, if they are ever willing to deal or address their mental health, is going to start in an informal support system. So family and friends, the folks that we consider our first responders when we're struggling or when we're in that emergency situation. Support doesn't always come in the form of, I'm here to talk about mental health. Sometimes it just looks like, a ride to work, a meal, or just something, maybe you just sit with that person. Presence matters. In the Black community, we got to acknowledge faith-based and spiritual support. For many, church and spiritual community plays a huge role in mental well-being. Some of us see our mental well-being through that lens. And these spaces can offer structure, connection, and meaning, especially when they embrace openness around mental health. So shout out to anyone who's attending a church that does prioritize your physical and your mental health along with your spiritual edification. And then mentorships and peer groups. Sometimes the best conversations happen peer-to-peer with someone who's just been through it and who can also talk to you about what you're going through. So drop in the chat. I'm very curious. Do you use more formal support systems or informal support systems when you're prioritizing and responding to your mental health? And if you're someone who feels like you have a healthy balance of both, then go ahead and drop the word both. But I'm curious, are we formal? Are we more informal? Are we more formal? Or are we both? Go ahead and drop it in the chat. Okay, I see some both coming in. Shout out to the people who are balanced. You're in therapy, you also have that group support, you got that friend support, you got that community support. You're in therapy and you're praying. All right, we got a lot of balanced people joining us tonight. Shout out to the people who are able to share both. So I want to share a quick conversation between Kirk Franklin, Jacob Lattimore, and David Banner that was moderated by Brian McIntosh. It's one episode in a series called For the Fellas. This series is available on YouTube. It's all about creating space for Black men to engage in real conversations. I encourage you to watch the entire conversation. It's about an hour long, a little over an hour. But this clip, I think, beautifully illustrates the power of both formal and informal support for Black men.
Here that he's a rapper who was raised in the house with mom and dad in the house. I just want to show that we just, I'm not going to let some stuff slide. And then just to highlight, bro, do you realize that you have your guest today all three Black men of different ages.
Yeah.
And we all are in right now consistent therapy.
Yeah.
I think that is something that is a powerful nugget to just take a time out and just let it breathe, that we've all been beneficiaries of stepping out of our comfort zone and opening up that vulnerability, because Black men going to therapy is still an area of taboo. It's still a great level of vulnerability, especially when you come from faith-based spaces, because you're programmed to think you can pray everything away. And so to be able to celebrate that, I commend you because I'm older than you. I commend you for doing that. I commend you for doing that because I'm older than you. I celebrate, and I'm so proud to listen to two men who have their hand and their pulse on the culture and the next generation also be able to say that I'm still a work in progress, and I'm a doctor that can't do surgery on myself. And I think that is something I just want to highlight and celebrate. I don't know if you've started that journey, if you've tried it, have you?
Yeah, no.
So
and I think that's the point of this show, right? Well, first of all, it's like giving Black men a space, being therapeutic in our conversation.
And this feel like therapy right here.
Yeah, for sure.
Facts.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
facts.
Oh, it is. And that's the bravery that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Not only are you brave enough to talk about it amongst men, but you're talking about it amongst the world.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's not easy
At
bro.
all.
Nah, it ain't.
At all.
Right.
In real time, especially what's going on in the world now,
Yeah.
it's to be applauded.
Nah, for sure. And I think just to double back on that, we had Da Vinci on the show last episode, and he's a big advocate for mental health. And he spoke about a lot of times as Black men, we think our mental health is fine just because nothing is currently going wrong, right? We're like, oh, well, I'm not really going through nothing right now, so I'm good. But it's like, are you really taking the time to self-meditate and think about how you're getting through your days, things that make you tick? You talk about being angry, how that comes out of an aspect of fear. Are you taking that time to self-learn about yourself? A lot of us, we don't. We think all right, well, ain't nothing bad going today, everything good, my lady good, everything cool. It's but have you really taken time to dive deep into that? To share an example, I lost my father right in front of me at 18.
So I think that that video does an amazing job of highlighting the use of formal support. They all talked about being in therapy, but then that informal support, simply being together in conversation with people who look like you, who recognize your story, who have similarities, who understand how that informal support is just as powerful, and then being able to put both of them together to really ensure that you are equipping yourself along your journey. So what we've named tonight is that silence isn't strength, connection is. And then isolation is the wound, then community is being part of the healing. So we're going to put it all together. I was just the appetizer. Our panel is the main course. We're going to combine informal support and highlight the power for community by spending the rest of our time together hearing from and engaging with a group of Black men who are mental health experts. As we move into the panel, I invite you to listen, not just for information, but reflection on what support can look like, feel like, and sound like when we make room for Black men to be fully human. I got some questions prepared to get us started, but we also want to hear from you. So there will be opportunity for you to drop questions in the chat. While we won't be able to get to all of them, we will highlight some of them and hopefully all be impacted by the expertise and the lived experiences of our panel. So with that, Elias Oseni is a skilled and empathetic therapist with over 3 years of experience supporting teens, young adults, and families through challenges like anxiety, depression, grief, trauma, and LGBTQ plus issues. He holds certifications in motivational interviewing, CPI nonviolent crisis intervention, assessing and managing suicide risk, and is a certified trauma professional. Elias uses evidence-based approaches such as CBT, personal-centered care, and solution-focused therapy to foster growth in a supportive and judgment-free environment. Holding a master's in clinical mental health counseling from Concordia University and a bachelor's in psychology from Augustana College, shout out Augustana, Elias, who brings personal reliance and a deep understanding of trauma to his work, In his free time, he enjoys biking, tennis, exploring new cuisine, and traveling, having visited countries like Nigeria, Italy, Jamaica, and Spain. Okay, we see you, world traveler. Okay. Next, we have Kerrell Rice. He is a dedicated social worker currently serving with Chicago Public Schools. With over 20 years of experience in education and 16 years specifically focused on clinical and mental health aspects of the field. Kerrell brings a deep understanding of social emotional needs of students, particularly those from the inner city and economically disadvantaged communities. Kerrell's academic training through school social work programs at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and Loyola University has equipped him with a professional foundation to meet the complex demands of his role. More importantly, his passion lies in connecting individuals with meaningful resources and support. He's deeply committed to uplifting the communities he serves through empathy, advocacy, and impactful care. And then last but certainly not least, Dr. Shantrell Huffman is a licensed psychologist with a multifaceted career dedicated to supporting children and families across therapeutic advocacy and educational settings. In his private practice, he provides family therapy and serves as a special education parent advocate, guiding families through the complexities of the IEP process. As a principal, I have so many questions, but I'm gonna hold them there. Additionally, Dr. Huffman partners with school systems to conduct psychoeducational assessments that inform disability classifications and special education eligibility. Such important work. He began his career in California. He has since worked across multiple states, bringing a national perspective to his work. Dr. Huffman's primary area of expertise centers on the over-identification of African-American and Hispanic male students as emotionally disturbed. He's deeply committed to educating school professionals on how systemic inequalities, social trauma shape the educational experience of minority boys. And those factors often lead to mislabeling and inappropriate placement. A passionate voice for equity in education, Dr. Huffman works tirelessly to foster more culturally responsive practices in school-based mental health. Ooh, let's just hold on. Let's just hold some space for all the greatness. My goodness, talk about Black excellence, Black men. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us tonight. Your experience, your expertise, your knowledge is invaluable. So I definitely want to jump in and get started. We're talking about isolation. We're talking about breaking barriers. We're talking about seeking support. So, there's probably somebody on this call who this may be their first step. So what are some of the first steps someone can take to access mental health support, both in school systems and in the private sector? Anyone can take that.
I can start in terms of school. Me being in a school system currently, Chicago schools. The counselors and social workers are critical in terms of clinicians who can give you the resource needed for mental health. And I've worked in the high school settings, elementary, and I tell my students, seek support, big or small. Use your resource. That's what we're here for. And so we advocate to the students. We're here for that reason. We're not teachers. We're not deans. We are clinicians. And it's different in education, but the reality is your counselor and social worker, those are your clinicians. So seek them out if you need support mentally. If that's for yourself or your family, that's our jobs and our roles is to provide resources to you. So anyone who's listening on call, if you're in a school setting, please reach out to the social worker and the counselors, because that is their role, is to provide you with mental health resources.
And to add on to that, honestly, a trusted individual is definitely going to make that process a little bit easier too. Reaching out to the teachers as well, and advocating for your kids will drive that process a lot faster. And in the private sector, reaching out to your insurance company. There is a customer service number at the back of the card that you can always call to utilize the mental health services that are within network. And outside of your insurance provider, there is a site called psychologytoday.com, literally psychologytoday.com. And this is a website where every clinician, psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist, ranging from, race to the type of insurance that you have, to location, to the specialty, you can always find the type of clinician that you're looking for through that website.
Right. I agree definitely with what the other panelists have said. And I just also would like to add to that, since we were speaking on about young people, is that we don't want to forget what young people have glued to them. So I always encourage kids, like as my fellow panelists said, after you reach out to the professionals at school, sometimes it's just use the phone. Your phone can be one of the best resources for all people, but especially for young people, because this is what they are more accustomed to. This is what they feel the most comfortable with. So just on your phone, even asking Siri for the names of help groups, the names of psychologists, the name of counselors in your area can be a valuable tool for children. And also because a lot of our teams, when we talk about children of color, they have a stigma, as you were mentioning, Mr. Jefferies, around therapy. The phone, right, and this device allows children to feel as if they are not sharing their personal business with somebody who may know them. So I always encourage children, as another tool, because we want to arm kids with tools, that this can be a very powerful tool in helping those kids access mental health services.
And to piggyback on that, like you were saying, using social media, back 20 years ago, there was no social media. There was no internet. So just a Google search, and you will get a plethora of resources. So absolutely use your resources, use your phone or your tablet or your laptop. There's so much support virtually or in person out there. With the Google search, it will pop up and give you an array of different access points. So absolutely.
Y'all are just giving people such accessible steps, from starting with an insurance card to starting with the Hey Siri. So even to those young people out there who's like, "Oh, my mama don't have insurance." Well, start with that Hey Siri, start with that Google search that Kerrell just mentioned, and use those keywords like free. But I think oftentimes we think it's so far, but y'all just made it so tangible. So I appreciate that. For young Black men who are struggling to find a provider or mentor that shares their identity or really understands their experience, what advice would you give them?
I think that
the doctor stated, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, while I think that it is very important, and it can be a great asset, right, to a lot of times, not just kids, but adults will want to identify, or they will specifically, people ask me all the time, do I know another Black clinician who may be taking clients on? And while I think that can be an asset and that can definitely, in therapy, I encourage kids and just people in general that the person doesn't necessarily have to look like you to understand your walk. And if you are really in the company of a good therapist, of a good mental health professional, right, what you will hope is that their training has opened their mind and liberated them to the point to whereas although they don't look like you, although they may not share the same sexual orientation, they may come from a 2-family household and you come from a 1-family household, but because of their program and their training, their mind has been open. They've already unlocked it. They've done the work themselves so that they are able to sit with you and they are able to hear your problems and they are able to give you tools. So I think it's an incredible thing, right, to go sit with somebody who looks like you. But just because I look like you doesn't necessarily always mean that I'm going to connect with you. So I think that the first thing that we have to teach our children especially is that your mental health provider does not have to look like you or have walked the walk, but you're looking for somebody whose mind has been open and that they are willing to not only do the work, but they've done the work and they have the tools to equip you. So that is what I would tell kids and also their parents.
I definitely love that take because oftentimes, at my private practice, I do get the Black boys because they're often looking for a Black therapist, which, I love because they can sometimes connect with me, but I've started to realize that I can't work with every Black boy because, again, I'm not the right fit, or the specialty is not the right fit for the client. So I very much love what you just said right now because, we need to change that mindset in our community. we need to give other clinicians of different races an opportunity, because they have lived experiences that can also, positively impact your therapy session. And to go back to the main question, if you're looking for Black clinicians, I did look up some resources that I can just say right now, and you guys can just write it down. So therapists for Black men, clinicians of color, melon, and mental health, and then the website that I mentioned earlier, Psychology Today, where you can just filter it to just like Black clinicians if that's what you're specifically looking for.
Yeah, same sentiments. Just seek the support. And if you do the therapist, if it's not a good fit, you can always change. Because you do want it to be a fit, so you can truly get the support. That's someone Black, female, whatever the case may be, seek the support and just get the assistance. So I can cover those things.
Dropping gems early. I think a lot of people just had like that brain emoji when it's like you ain't necessarily worried about what they look like. Where are they at in terms of how their mind is expanded and how well they are versed in their expertise? I think that is so powerful. And then this idea of like, you don't have to stick with one. If you are trying to therapist or trying to counselor and it's not working, you have the right to then find another provider that fits your level of comfortability. So thank you, gentlemen. I'm wondering, what strategies do you recommend to begin breaking out of emotional or social isolation, especially when, oftentimes we don't even know where to start?
I think that if I can speak, I don't know. I think that isolation, right, is like that movie Get Out, right? Isolation is the true sunken place. And I think that
I'm sorry.
No, I'm listening. I don't know if someone was saying something.
Oh, you can go ahead. Sorry, there was.
Oh, okay. No, I was just saying, like, I think
lag.
Okay, I was just saying, I think isolation is like that movie Get Out, right? It's the true sunken place.
Sorry. Isolation. Isolation can quickly amplify sadness and anxiety. So I typically encourage my clients to create a routine that involves like social interactions with families and friends. Engaging shared interest with groups. Join social groups, support groups. Reach out to people that you haven't spoken to in a while. Going back to the interest group, joining a sport group, maybe a workshop group, book clubs, community type settings, just to, expose you to people or like-minded people.
And even things like this panel tonight. I knew Jefferies from another school, and he reached out. I said, of course, because anything that will connect you to support. And in terms of the Black space, it is still, and it was taboo in our community. Black folks, we went to church and prayed about it, but there was no true space for someone Black, especially Black males, to get support. I think that it's nowadays shifted, and it's needed, because Black men do go through a lot. When I was at my high school, before I went at the school I'm at now, 10 students were murdered. What was going on in their lives? They didn't either reach out or of course we can look in terms of environment and social inequities, but the reality is 10 children were murdered. What mentally is happening in their lives, their parents' lives, or in their community where that even took place? Did they seek that? They struggled with something and they didn't reach to someone. Well, it ended up where they were killed. So it's so important. It's whatever it may be. If you feel alone, talk to someone, and hopefully that will spawn someone else reaching out who can provide a resource to you. Because in today's youth, it's so needed.
And
kids are going through things that we just may not understand because it's a different world. But they have to know, please seek out support from someplace before it becomes an egregious situation where you are possibly contemplating suicide or something else could happen. Seek the support.
And I think it's important for kids to understand that sometimes seeking support doesn't mean that you have to verbally ask. What I would tell somebody who is truly isolated is to show up someplace, right? So if I just show up maybe at the boys club, and if I just keep showing up every week, eventually what we will hope is that there's going to be an adult there or another kid there who is going to see me, who will maybe connect with me. So I think
they'll
that
probably realize there's a problem with this person. Let me interview. What's going on, man? You okay? How you
Exactly.
look down?
Exactly.
But if you're not there, they can't see that or feel.
They can't see you. Exactly.
They can't see. But
I
you can
agree with that.
tell when someone's going through something. Someone will eventually say, "Hey, man, you know what's going on with you?" Well, Mr. Rice, man, and then the process of healing happens at that point.
Exactly. I so agree with that.
And then also too, going back to social media and technology, you know, as much as it also can connect us, it can also sometimes make us feel lonely. Because, you know, as we all know now, we can see what other people are doing, right? People are traveling, doing this, doing that. And sometimes that can even deepen loneliness.
Yeah.
So what I typically would encourage people to do is let's limit the social media for a little bit, you know, maybe a few weeks, maybe 30 days, and just see how that changes your mental health.
So that's a good point as well. Sometimes you just need to go to the park and take a walk. Put the phone down, disengage from social media stuff. Sometimes it's 24/7. Sometimes detaching from that and just getting back to a basis of just being alone or just doing something outside of that is so needed, even for adults.
That's true.
So
you can't ask for your.
Yep.
I think that in family therapy, I always say you cannot ask for your child to reduce their screen time. You don't.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I think that before any parent, if you're a parent and if you're going to ask your child to reduce their screen time for the first 7 days before you even bring it to the table, you actually reduce your screen time by 30%, and so you can see what it feels like, and then you take it to your child. Don't ask your child today to reduce their screen time, and you haven't even seen what it looks like. It's
because you're modeling behavior. If you're doing it, you know, you're the model. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that point around show up was so powerful, so powerful. I think oftentimes, you know, one of the ways that I reflect on my time, you know, in the school, being a former teacher and principal, one of the ways we know that something is wrong is we look at attendance. And if you ain't showing up, then it's something wrong. But we don't really know what is wrong oftentimes. But if you are there and you're in a school that has people who are dedicated and who are there for the right reasons, they're gonna see and they're gonna notice. And I think it's so powerful. Parents out there may not know what to do. Take them to school. Make them go to school. There's somebody there who's gonna support them, support you. I think that was profound. That show up is really going to stick with me for a long time. So thank you, gentlemen. Again, dropping so much important knowledge. I hope you are taking away things, taking notes. I got a few more questions prepared for the panel, but we want to start to hear from you. So if you're joining us, you have a question, you have something that you want to lift to our experts, start to drop it in the chat, and we'll filter out some of those questions and get them asked. Gentlemen, I'm wondering, what are some ways peers or family members can show up for Black men or young boys, young men who are clearly struggling, even if they ain't asking for help directly? How can when we see it? How can we as peers and family members show up for the Black men and the Black boys who are struggling?
Community is a foundation. Like, community is a big foundation, and I will say, like, holding space for them to just be who they are, express their thoughts, their feelings without judgment, practicing empathy. One of the things that I've come to realize is that as we get older, we forget what kids go through sometimes, and then we don't expect that they're going through their own stuff. And that's not true. So I just wish that, more of us will just have that empathy for them and not dismiss what they're going through, because to them, it's valid. And when, parents, uncles, aunties, cousins, when no one is listening they typically search it for. That's when they typically search elsewhere for that support, and oftentimes it's the wrong type of support.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that if you have a person, a young, male person of color in your life, whether you are the big uncle, the big cousin, you're the uncle, you're the brother, another thing that I say in therapy all the time is, y'all, we need to date our loved ones, right? Everybody talks about they got a date night with their girl, they got a date night with their boy. Date your nephews, date your sons. And what I mean by that is, you pick a day, if it's once a month, if it's once every other month, where they know that they are going to do something with you. That's why you do it with your girl, right? Because you're trying to foster a relationship with her. Women say all the time, he don't date me no more, and she feels disconnected. So the child in your life, right, wants to feel connected with you. And so in our language, what we know that action kind of looks like is dating. So if you mentally say to yourself, I am dating my nephew every third Monday, I am dating my son every fourth Friday, right? They look forward to that. You look forward to that. And it's not always this heavy conversation, but through activity and through that communal time, they are watching you, you are modeling to them, and they are opening up to you. And so I think that's very cute. Right? I say it all the time. I just think if parents and people who are in children's lives can just write that down. If you're dating your girl, you're dating your boy, date the child in your life, especially if it's a young Black boy. And it doesn't mean that you got to go out and spend a whole bunch of money with them. You could literally sit in the house and play Xbox or PS5, whatever the game system, whatever they want to do. But that time that you would allocate, just do that with them so that they know you're going to show up and watch and see how they start to share with you. It may take a minute, but they will start to share because they will look forward to date night with their dad, date night with uncle such and such, date night with their big brother, date night with their cousin. And then what you're doing is you're training the next generation. So then when they grow up, they will also model that behavior to the other young Black men in their lives, right? So that's how we start to break down those walls. So again, if you can date your girl and if you can date your dude, you can date a young Black male in your life. So that I think that's very important.
In same sentiments, you have to be intentional. People know when you care. And so when you connect with someone, if you truly come from a heartfelt space, they know it and they will organically open up. But you have to be intentional. Do you really care? Like Mr. Rice, are you truly concerned? Or this is your job? And they can tell, but you have to be direct and intentional in doing that. Kids are the most, they can see through you and your BS quicker than anybody else. They know if you're BSing them. If you're intentional, if you're heartfelt, they will receive you without question. I mean, the toughest kids will break down and let you know, look, I need support if they know you care enough. So same sentence.
Yeah, I that date, your loved one, that intimate time is so profound. And I reflect. I got a date after this. My son is in the other room right now learning how to play taco burrito. We're playing taco burrito after that with this call. But we have that intentional time set apart. And I also reflect on that. It's not necessarily a date, but there's that moment. There's that 17-minute drive from school pickup, in which I am asking about his day, and it goes from "Did you have a good day?" in which he can easily opt out and say yes, or not really give me anything, to more intentional questions. What's something that made you smile today at school? What's something that frustrated you? Was there anything that you were proud of today? Was there anything that you wish you could do differently? And just that 17-minute check-in is just a way that I keep a pulse on my child's mental well-being and physical experiences within school. But those date moments, that intentionality, because don't nobody want to go on a dry date. So if we conversation ain't hidden, this is not the stop. So being intentional with preparing for that time is so key as well.
I mean, just like us, when you're with somebody dating, you know when someone cares about you, when they're into you, you clearly can tell. So the same way we can feel that, kids can too. They know when you're being real with them.
And honestly, what we're doing in those moments too is creating memories, memories that they can keep with them for years, right? And that also allows them, like when you're that vulnerable with your kids, it allows them to see you in a different light, right? Not just in that parental role where it's just this is mom and dad who makes the rules, right? Yes, there needs to be a balance between, being a parent and also, the ability to be your child's friend. There's a limit to that. But once that happens,
I think we might have lost him.
Yeah, I think there's
Oh, he froze for a moment. It's
I think he was saying, show them that you're human. I tell my daughter, if I make a mistake, Daddy's sorry. I'm human. I'm not going to always get it right. So when they see you're genuine and you're organic, kid will receive it.
Right.
We're people just like them.
No, yeah, I think that's true, because when you're doing that, when you're all these things that we're talking about, right, we're helping to shape and to teach children executive functioning skills, right? And one of the things, if we're talking about mental health, that really informs and really helps us to be who we are is our executive functioning. And children need to see healthy examples of executive functioning, right? So a lot of times when we're talking about what kids can't do and they can't self-regulate themselves and they can't do all these things, it's because they have seen or maybe have not seen the correct modeling of executive functioning. And so all these things that we're talking about, right, is helping to teach our children, especially our Black boys, how to successfully, use our executive functioning skills.
And how you handle conflict, how you handle this. If there's a disagreement, you don't have to go get a gun. You can talk it out. But if they don't see that, if all they see is, hey, man, I'm about to, they need examples of, like you were saying, the correct ways to function and to handle and process your emotions in a healthy way and to have healthy coping skills. If they don't see it, how will they? How else will they? How will they know if there's no examples around it?
Absolutely. I want one more question, and then we got some questions in the chat that I want to get to. Shout out to those who are dropping questions. Shout out to those who are engaged in the chat and practicing vulnerability. We appreciate you. We see you. But kind of along to what we were talking about, and we talked about a little bit about this last night, but I want to hear from your experience and your expertise. What does it look like to create a space where Black men and boys feel safe enough to truly be vulnerable and emotionally expressive?
Again, as we've been saying tonight, it has to be intentional and it has to be sincere. I think those talking points are so important because kids can tell. And then, of course, it provides them adequate resources. But I think the first step is truly they have to feel you are genuinely concerned about their well-being. And then they will just naturally open to. So I think the first step is truly having them feel this is truly a safe space and that this person is truly trying to help and help me in my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would say that sometimes you can go into it thinking like I'm creating a space for especially a Black boy to be vulnerable. I think sometimes you have to go into it thinking I'm creating a space where I can model something to this child. And then in the process, right, if he becomes vulnerable enough to share something with me, then that becomes an added bonus. But sometimes if I go into it because I want to break you down, I want you to share, like we all seen these movies, right, where it's like this, they break the kid down, they had this come to Jesus moment, blah, 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 blah. But those of us who kind of do the work know that doesn't always happen, right? Especially when you're working with youngsters. So sometimes you actually just need to create a space where you are the person that may be doing more of the work, because your goal is really to model and to teach that child something. And then maybe eventually you may not see the fruit of your labor. You may never see it, right? It could take 5 years, it could take 10 years. You may never see it, but maybe at some point that child may remember something that you said, something that you did, and that may be their vulnerable moment. But you being real, you may not never experience the vulnerable moment with a child, especially depending upon the social economic status, what's the family background, where that kid is right now. But what I can almost guarantee you is that if you are modeling what you want the child to see, the child will remember it. But you may not see that vulnerability in your moment. So I think the goal is to create a space where you're doing something that you eventually want that child to know and to be able to reflect and pull it out their toolkit.
As I always say, behavior influence behavior. So that's very important.
Yeah.
Got it. So when we're creating those safe spaces, it's the teacher model. First, it's the I do. Let me model this for you. Then we're gonna get to the point where it's, you know, the we do. We're gonna do this together, and then it's gonna be the you do. We're gonna come to the space, you're gonna be ready to go. So I appreciate that. I want to take a couple of questions that I see from our audience, and I thank you all, but definitely want to uplift some. One from Sasha: what can Black women do to support Black men in their mental health, as a friend or a partner, mother, etc.?
And this
Honestly,
is
just
for her
check in.
partner, or
Checking in, and yeah, you know,
Free, just
being curious
communicate.
about how they're, you know, I would say just again, just providing that space for them to be vulnerable, and even down to the type of questions that you ask, right? Let's not be accusatory. Let's try to be more empathetic. Let's try to be curious with the type of questions that we're asking rather than being pointed. And the last thing, you know, I would say respect their timing, their autonomy to share. You know, if it's not the right time, let's not keep pushing. If we keep pushing, you're not going to get anything from them. So just, you know, allow them to share when they're ready.
yeah, I agree with that. And if the sister was talking about like her partner, I would say one of the key things is that you don't necessarily want to always be pushing the word therapy to a person who may be adverse to therapy. I think there are steps along the way. I think that what Black women are really good at is women have sister groups. And I think that Black women are sharing with their counterparts, right? And so I think one of the first things that Black women can do for her, a Black woman can do for her partner, is to maybe encourage him to be in relationships with other positive men, whether they are Black or white, so that those group of men are modeling again the type of behavior, the type of decision-making skills that she actually wants to see in a partner. And then once he is accustomed to that, maybe you can bring up the idea of therapy. But it is hard to start at zero. Your baseline is zero, and you're talking to a man. I don't know if he's Black, white. It doesn't have to be a man, but you're talking to anybody, and their baseline is zero, and they have no conception of therapy, and they're averse to it. Sometimes that word just throws a person to the left. And so what you have to realize is that therapy comes in different forms, different shapes, different sizes. And sure, it's great to get to the level of somebody who, you know, has an MSW or PhD or PsyD or LPC, but there are steps along the way. And Black women, again, are good at their sister groups. So Black women can also encourage brothers to be in brother groups. And again, that does not mean that everybody in the group has to be Black, but they just want to be in relations with men who are making the type of decisions and have the mental or the emotional intelligence that they would like to see modeled in their household. That's what sisters should be looking for when they are encouraging their men to go out and partner with other men. So that is what I would say.
And I think someone said the word respect. When you come to someone when you're communicating with respect, you're better received. It's not accusatory. You're not attacking. I'm respecting you, and in the line of the communication should remain open.
So kind of along those lines, I want to highlight a question from the Tyrrell, very similar to what you guys were already sharing. I've had a relationship with a Black man who doesn't believe in therapy, but struggles with relationships with the women in his life. How can I encourage him to address the source of his anger and pain? And I just think this is something that many people resonate and connect with.
Past trauma. So obviously the person has some past trauma in their life, probably still from their childhood. That's what it sounds like, right? Is that what the person is saying? I'm sorry.
The question is just saying that they don't believe in therapy. But they're struggling to have strong relationships with the women in their life, and they're wondering how do they encourage them to address their source of anger and pain.
Well, someone has to want to receive the help. You can't force any type of support. So, you know, hopefully eventually they'll come around, but the person has to want to receive the support. So she keeps maybe in her own way suggesting without pushing, they'll come around. But for it to truly work, the person has to want to heal.
And along the way, maybe the first step might just be identifying maybe what the source is, right? So maybe let's say the breakdown in the relationship is because the person had an adverse relationship with their sister. So maybe even if the person can just identify that the cause or the root of it is because I had an adverse relationship with my sister. And maybe if they can just write that down And then maybe that just sits for a minute. And then again, everything in life you want to build upon, right? It's just like a foundation. So maybe if you can at least get them to identify it, and then maybe you revisit it, and maybe they share something else. And again, the goal is to get them to, right, this therapy. But maybe if they can just start to identify and just make little notes, and then they can start doing a little bit of work themselves until you can get them to the point to where they are open enough to go sit with somebody. Because again, as the brother said, if they don't want the help, then it's going to be very hard. So sometimes you have to, in your own way, be the help. And sometimes just being able to identify what the source or who the source is or what the source is can be a great starter.
And to speak to what you just said, sir, it also goes back to that informal support. And going back to the, informal support, again, older Black in the family that can, help speak to, to the younger generation can help as well. That definitely fits into the informal model of that. And maybe even, and depending on the age, programs such as like Boys and Girls Club, Big Brother, Little Sister, that can also work as informal. Again, it's not therapy, but they provide some support that can, again, spark that interest. And the goal is to plant a seed to a point where they are also interested in wanting to explore that resources for themselves.
I think the only other thing that I would add, and I'm curious what y'all perspective on this is, like I think about anger, especially within Black men, and being able to address it with the people being able to address it in someone that you care about. And oftentimes we want to address it in that moment, and that is not the moment to address it. We think we're helping, we think we're calling it out, we think we're bringing it to, we're only filling the flame, and it explodes. But being cognizant of that moment, take note of some of the behavior, some of the actions, some of the things that were said, and then bringing it up at a different time. Maybe actually bringing it up at a time in which there's laughter and there's happiness happening. And now I'm going to change the conversation just a little bit to have that reflection in a more neutral and a more open environment. And if it goes left, I'll shut it down. But being intentional and strategic around when you are highlighting and bringing the things to that person's attention.
I agree with that. And sometimes too, y'all, sometimes, right, like this is a thing that I say in therapy, and sometimes, we're always trying hard to unpack, figure out where stuff came from. And I agree with that. We do need to sometimes figure out where stuff came from. But sometimes, y'all, stuff needs to just die, right? Sometimes it just needs to die. Because sometimes what you need to realize is that I can't change it. And so it happened. And so right now in this moment, you're actually okay. And I think that's an amazing tool to have. I always say in sessions, you get one time, people say, I'm so insensitive on this, it is what it is. I say you get one time to cry about something that happened to you 20 years ago. Because guess what? You're no longer you're not there 20 years ago. So yes, I get it. They did this to you 20 years ago and it was horrible. So let's cry about it today. I've given you that, you giving yourself that, and now we got to move on. Because you cannot
you can't change it. You cannot fix it. You can just heal from it. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. If Big Mama did you wrong, and if Big Mama is dead, you're not bringing Big Mama back to correct it. It just it's gone.
Yeah. I learned a quote earlier this year, and I think it's a powerful quote. It says, "Your past is a book. Read it. Don't live in it." And essentially, that's what you're talking about. Because when we're always living in the past, we can never move forward, right? And that is very detrimental to everyone. Like if you cannot move forward,
you're stuck.
And then you're revamping the trauma. You're just reliving it over and over again. You have to find a way to heal and move past it.
Right. So and the other issue with reliving trauma is that you read it and you read the narrative. 90% of us are telling stories about our childhood that really is inaccurate. And you're telling it from your perspective only. So you don't have the total view. So you're telling a one-dimensional story that if you're 40 now, that story has changed at least 50,000 times. So that is why it needs to die at some point, and you need to be reborn, and so you can move forward.
And to realize it's not your fault. You can't internalize it. Whatever happened, you were probably a child. That person also had trauma. That was their trauma. You can't internalize their trauma. You didn't do anything wrong. It did happen, which was egregious, but it's not. You can't personalize and say, I did something wrong. No, you didn't. Usually, you cannot internalize somebody else's trauma.
So we're not dismissing our past. We ain't saying it didn't happen. We're going to acknowledge it, and then we're going to go on and keep on living. And if you don't walk away with nothing else, walk away with that tonight. We're going to highlight something from Rhonda. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but she's specifically asking what are tips that can be used to encourage students to see a non-Black counselor when there isn't a Black counselor available.
Again, it's I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say, you should interview your counselors, right? So even when you go through your insurance, now a lot of them, they have the I know when I go online for my insurance, right? They have the whole checklist, so you can check off a lot of stuff and filter it out. But then once you should narrow it down to maybe 3. But then when you meet with them, you really should be interviewing your therapist the first session. You should really try to get to know if that person really can relate to you and your experience. So it's not just a one-way street. That first session, you should really, be interviewing that person. And maybe you do that, like I said, for at least 3 people so that you can make sure that of those 3 you're interviewing, because this person is going to be very integral in your life. So don't just go with the first one. Even if the person is a person of color, please interview the therapist before you just sit down and start sharing your personal experiences with somebody.
The same way you test drive a car to see if it's a fit, same narrative. If this is a fit that can truly support my efforts. So I agree.
I really appreciate what is being shared. Drop some of the takeaways in the chat around some of the things that our panelists have shared with us. So many nuggets, so many practical tools, so many things that we can use, not just as we are supporting the Black men in our life, the young boys, the young adults in our lives, but ourselves as well. I want to do one final question, rapid round. So we'll go Kerrell, Elias, and then we'll end with Dr. Shantrell for this last question. But if you could leave Black men and boys with one message about their mental health, what would it be?
Well, like the doctor stated, I like the sentiment of cannot change the past. Find a way to heal around it. And then again, reach out. If that's a pastor, your homie, your uncle, you go to the Boys and Girls Club, go to the Park District, please seek support because people will help. If you engage, eventually you will find someone who will support you and try to help you move. But you have to be open enough to go to someone and let them find you support. So the panel, the people listening, please talk to someone. Keep talking to people. If the first person does not help you, somebody eventually will. Do not stop seeking support.
I would say, your mental health matters. You deserve help. And it's okay. It's okay. Simple.
Yeah, I like that. I would say that because in our community, right, we're not only always talking about our personal life, but our financial life too, right? So to me, it's all connected. So I would say that your mental health is your key to personal and financial wealth. Yeah. It's very difficult for one to navigate life and its complexity, including how to build and maintain wealth without being mentally stable. So I would encourage all people of color, Black boys, Black girls, Black men, Black women who are serious about being the captain of their life ship to do the work to unpack the trauma in their lives so that they can truly lead a healthy life and then engage in meaningful relationships so that their life is successful.
I cannot thank each of you enough. Kerrell, Rice, Elias, Oseni, Dr. Shantrell, Huffman, thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you for representing us as Black men and Black boys in the field of mental health and the field of education. Such important work. I know the power of seeing somebody who looks like you in those things. So not only are you helping them, but you're reminding them that they could be where you're at as well. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. Y'all shared so much knowledge. Let the people keep in touch with you. So if you're comfortable, feel free to drop your LinkedIn or something in the chat. Drop your social media in the chat if you want people to stay connected with you. But we are so grateful for your expertise. We are so grateful for the work that you do. And I don't think this will be our last conversation. So thank each of you. Really, really appreciate you. Show some love to the panel in the chat, y'all. Show some love to them.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes.
Privilege.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Jefferies. And Mr. Jefferies, I just wanted to say one thing. I saw in the chat the young lady, I believe, who asked the question and she said, "How is?" I just didn't want her to walk away from this. So she's talking about sexual abuse. How is that validating his experience, though? Especially, I think one of the questions that was asked had something to do with maybe sexual abuse. And in the chat it says, "How is that validating his experience?" I can't remember what the exact question was, but I'll be more than happy to put my email address in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to take questions or whatever offline. I just want to make sure that she walks away with an understanding of maybe what we were saying, or
Absolutely.
if she needs directions to someone else, that she can get that help. So I'll put my email in the chat.
Absolutely. And we'll also share email that you can follow up with as well for any more needed context, or even if you're seeking out more resources and things like that. But thank you, Dr. Huffman, for calling that out. We definitely want to make sure everybody's walking away with what they need tonight. Again, thank you. Show some more love to our panel. Y'all made this night. Like I said, they were the main course. Thank y'all so much.
And gentlemen, thank you for your service, gentlemen. It's neat. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir. Good night, everybody.
All right, we're going to get ready to close out. But I want to, again, so much wisdom, so much knowledge from Elias, Kerrell, and Dr. Shantrell. So honored to have them. I hope you took away something that's going to help you or help those who you love the most. We don't want this work to end here. We don't want the conversation to end here. So just like we did in our last workshop last night, I'm gonna drop some reflection questions that we've turned into a reflection resource. So you can access this resource, use those reflection questions, use the exercises that are listed there as you're continuing this work. If you're watching this webinar, watching the recording at a different time, please also access the resource as well. It's a complimentary reflection to the work, to the discussion that we had here tonight. So again, we want to commit to keep doing the work. I also want to share quickly, we're talking about eliminating isolation. We're talking about support. And oftentimes it's like, wait a minute, how do I do that? I see the need. I want to do something about it. I'm not sure how to do it. Nearly 70% of young people don't believe that they have the expertise or the basic knowledge to help a friend. And that ain't just young people. Some of us older people feel the same way. So whether you want to use this tool for yourself or share it with someone, this framework is a way to combat isolation for those you care about. So it's ASK. The framework is ASK. It stands for acknowledge, support, keep in touch, and it represents 3 essential proven actions to help friends when they need us. So we want to acknowledge. We want to create a supportive space. We've been talking about that over the last 2 nights, letting them know that we're here for them. Support, validate their feelings and ask them what they need. Keep in touch, check back regularly and consistently to continue that connection. So you can go to axtohelp.com. Please share this experience with the other young adults in your life. You can use this experience, but this digital experience will give you experience in supporting those friends and allow you to kind of practice a little bit before you actually are talking to that person that you care about. Lastly, before we close out, please scan the QR code. I want your feedback. We want your feedback. We want to continue to do this, but we want to make sure that we're doing it the best way possible. So your feedback is essential to that. It's a quick survey. Go in it, select workshop 2. This is workshop number 2. And please provide your thoughts. We read it, we look at it, we learn from it, we utilize it, we use it. So your feedback, your voice is valuable in the work that we do.